Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om 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 Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Here we are again, reading from Bhagavad-Gita as it is, beginning with chapter 3, Karma Yoga. Everyone must engage in some sort of activity in this material world, but actions can either bind one to this world or liberate one from it. By acting for the pleasure of the Supreme, without selfish motives, one can be liberated from the law of karma, action and reaction, and attain transcendental knowledge of the Self and the Supreme. Text 1. Hare Krishna. Arjuna uvacha jayasi chet karmanaste mata buddhir janardana tat kim karmani gode mam niyojayasi Kesava. Arjun said, O Janardana, O Kesava, why do you want to engage me in this ghastly warfare if you think that intelligence is better than fruitive work? Purport. Hey, Damodar-san, I heard you led an ecstatic kirtan last night.
Oh,
It was vibrating all through the three worlds, and it came into my room, and
so much.
fantastic. Hare Krishna. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, has very elaborately described the constitution of the soul in the previous chapter, with a view to delivering his intimate friend Arjuna from the ocean of material grief. And the path of realization has been recommended, Buddha Yoga, or Krishna consciousness. Sometimes Krishna consciousness is misunderstood to be inertia, and one with such a misunderstanding often withdraws to a secluded place to become fully Krishna conscious by chanting the holy names of Lord Krishna. But without being trained in the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, it is not advisable to chant the holy name of Krishna in a secluded place, where one may acquire only cheap adoration from the innocent public. Arjuna also thought of Krishna consciousness, or Buddha Yoga, or intelligence and spiritual advancement of knowledge as something like retirement from active life and the practice of penance and austerity at a secluded place. In other words, he wanted to skillfully avoid the fighting by using Krishna consciousness as an excuse. But as a sincere student, he placed the matter before his master and questioned Krishna as to his best course of action. In answer, Lord Krishna elaborately explained Karma Yoga, or work in Krishna consciousness, in this third chapter. Text 2. Vyamisheneva bhakyena buddhim mohayasi vame tatikam vadanishchitya yena shreho hamapyunam. My intelligence is bewildered by your equivocal instructions. Therefore, please tell me decisively which will be more beneficial for me. Purport. In the previous chapter, as a prelude to the Bhagavad-Gita, many different paths were explained, such as Sankhya Yoga, Buddha Yoga, control of the senses by intelligence, work without fruitive desire, and the position of the neophyte. This was all presented unsystematically. A more organized outline of the path would be necessary for action and understanding. Arjuna, therefore, wanted to clear up these apparently confusing matters so that any common man could accept them without misinterpretation. Although Krishna had no intention of confusing Arjuna by any jugglery of words, Arjuna could not follow the process of Krishna consciousness either by inertia or by active service. In other words, by his questions, he is clearing the path of Krishna consciousness for all students who seriously want to understand the mystery of the Bhagavad-Gita. Text 3. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Lokesmin Bibidam Nishta Pura Prokta Mayanaga Jnana Yogina Sankhyanam Karma Yogina Yoginam. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O sinless Arjun, I have already explained that there are two classes of men who try to realize the self. Some are inclined to understand it by empirical, philosophical speculation, and others by devotional service. Purport. In the second chapter, verse 39, the Lord explained two kinds of procedures, namely Sankhya Yoga and Karma Yoga, or Buddhi Yoga. In this verse, the Lord explains the same more clearly. Sankhya Yoga, or the analytical study of the nature of spirit and matter, is the subject matter for persons who are inclined to speculate and understand things by experimental knowledge and philosophy. The other class of men work in Krishna consciousness, as it is explained in the 61st verse of the second chapter. The Lord has explained also in the 39th verse that by working by the principles of Buddhi Yoga, or Krishna consciousness, one can be relieved from the bonds of action, and furthermore, there is no flaw in the process. The same principle is more clearly explained in the 61st verse, that this Buddhi Yoga is to depend entirely on the Supreme, or more specifically, on Krishna. And in this way, all the senses can be brought under control very easily. Therefore, both the yogas are interdependent, as religion and philosophy. Religion without philosophy is sentiment, or sometimes fanaticism, while philosophy without religion is mental speculation. The ultimate goal is Krishna, because the philosophers, who are also sincerely searching after the absolute truth, come in the end to Krishna consciousness. This is also stated in the Bhagavad-Gita. The whole process is to understand the real position of the self in relation to the super-self. The indirect process is philosophical speculation, by which gradually one may come to the point of Krishna consciousness. And the other process is directly connecting everything with Krishna in Krishna consciousness. Of these two, the path of Krishna consciousness is better because it does not depend on purifying the senses by a philosophical process. Krishna consciousness is itself the purifying process, and by the direct method of devotional service, it is simultaneously easy and sublime. Text 4. Nakarmanam manadamban naishkamyam purushoshnute nachasanyasanadeva siddhim samadhigacchati. Not by merely abstaining from work can one achieve freedom from reaction, nor by renunciation alone can one attain perfection. Purport. The renounced order of life can be accepted when one has been purified by the discharge of the prescribed forms of duties which are laid down just to purify the hearts of materialistic men. Without purification, one cannot attain success by abruptly adopting the fourth order of life, sannyas. According to the empirical philosophers, simply by adopting sannyas or retiring from fruitive activities, one at once becomes as good as Narayan. But Lord Krishna does not approve this principle. Without purification of heart, sannyas is simply a disturbance to the social order. On the other hand, if someone takes to the transcendental service of the Lord, even without discharging his prescribed duties, whatever he may be able to advance in the cause is accepted by the Lord, Buddhi Yoga. Swalpam apyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. Even a slight performance of such a principle enables one to overcome great difficulties. Text 5. Nahi kachchit chanamapi Jatu tisyati karma grit karyate yavashak karma sarvak prakritijar gunahi. Everyone is forced to act helplessly according to the qualities he has acquired from the modes of material nature. Therefore, no one can refrain from doing something, not even for a moment. Purport. It is not a question of embodied life, but it is the nature of the soul to be always active. Without the presence of the spirit soul, the material body cannot move. The body is only a dead vehicle to be worked by the spirit soul, which is always active and cannot stop even for a moment. As such, the spirit soul has to be engaged in the good work of Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, it will be engaged in occupations dictated by illusory energy. In contrast with material energy, the spirit soul acquires in contact with material energy, the spirit soul acquires material modes. And to purify the soul from such affinities, it is necessary to engage in the prescribed duties enjoined in the Shastras. But if the soul is engaged in his natural function of Krishna consciousness, whatever he is able to do is good for him. The Srimad Bhagavatam affirms this. Chaktva swadharmam charanam bhujam harer bhajan apakvo tapatet tato yadi yatra kova badamabhud amushakim kovarta apto bhajatam swadharmataha. If someone takes to Krishna consciousness, even though he may not follow the prescribed duties in the Shastras or execute the devotional service properly, and even though he may fall down from the standard, there is no loss or evil for him. But if he carries out all the injunctions for purification in the Shastras, what does it avail him if he is not Krishna conscious? In the Christian scriptures they say, what use is to acquire the whole world if one lose one's imperishable soul? It's the same idea. So the purificatory process is necessary for reaching this point of Krishna consciousness. Therefore, sannyas, or any purificatory process, is to help reach the ultimate goal by becoming Krishna conscious, without which everything is considered a failure. Text 6. Karmindriyani samyamya ya aste manasasmaran indriyartan vibhudatma mityacharasa uchate. One who restrains the senses of action, but whose mind dwells on sense objects, certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender. Purport. There are many pretenders who refuse to work in Krishna consciousness, but make a show of meditation while actually dwelling within the mind upon sense enjoyment. Such pretenders may also speak on dry philosophy in order to bluff sophisticated followers, but according to this verse, these are the greatest cheaters. For sense enjoyment, one can act in any capacity of the social order, but if one follows the rules and regulations of his particular status, he can make gradual progress in purifying his existence. But he who makes a show of being a yogi, while actually searching for the object of sense gratification, must be called the greatest cheater, even though he sometimes speaks of philosophy. His knowledge has no value because the effects of such his knowledge has no value because the effects of such a sinful man's knowledge are taken away by the illusory energy of the Lord. Such a pretender's mind is always impure, and therefore his show of yogic meditation has no value whatsoever. Text 7. Yas tvindriyani manasa niyamyara paterjana karmindriyahi karma yogam asaktak safishishyate. On the other hand, if a sincere person tries to control the active senses by the mind and begins karma yoga in Krishna consciousness without attachment, he is by far superior. Purport. Instead of becoming a pseudo-transcendentalist for the sake of wanton living and sense enjoyment. It is far better to remain in one's own business and execute the purpose of life, which is to get free from material bondage and enter into the kingdom of God. The prime Svartagati, or goal of self-interest, is to reach Vishnu. The whole institution of Varna and Ashrama is designed to help us reach this goal of life. A householder can also reach this destination by regulated service in Krishna consciousness. For self-realization, one can live a controlled life as prescribed in the Shastras and continue carrying out his business without attachment, and in that way make progress. A sincere person who follows this method is far better situated than the false pretender who adopts show bottle spiritualism to cheat the innocent public. A sincere sweeper in the street is far better than the charlatan meditator who meditates only for the sake of making a living. Text 8. Niyatam kuru karma tvam karma jayo yakarmanaha sharira yatra pichate na prasidyat akarmanaha. Perform your prescribed duty, for doing so is better than not working. One cannot even maintain one's physical body without work. Purport. There are many pseudo-meditators who misrepresent themselves as being great professional men of high parentage and who falsely pose that they have sacrificed everything for the sake of advancement in spiritual life. Lord Krishna did not want Arjuna to become a pretender. Rather, the Lord desired that Arjuna perform his prescribed duties as set forth for Kshatriyas. Arjuna was a householder and a military general, and therefore it was better for him to remain as such and perform his religious duties as prescribed for the householder Kshatriya. Such activities gradually cleanse the heart of a mundane man and free him from material contamination. So-called renunciation for the purpose of maintenance is never approved by the Lord, nor by any religious scripture. After all, one has to maintain one's body and soul together by some work. Work should not be given up capriciously, without purification of materialistic propensities. Anyone who is in the material world is certainly possessed of the impure propensity for lording it over material nature, or in other words, for sense gratification. Such polluted propensities have to be cleared. Without doing so, through prescribed duties, one should never attempt to become a so-called transcendentalist, renouncing work and living at the cost of others. Text 9. Yagyar tat kamanon yatra lokoyam karmabandanaha tadakam karmakonteya mukta sangha samachara. Work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work causes bondage in this material world. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction, and in this way you will always remain free from bondage. Purport. Since one has to work even for the simple maintenance of the body, the prescribed duties for a particular social position and quality are so made that the purpose can be fulfilled. Yajna means Lord Vishnu, or sacrificial performances. All sacrificial performances are meant for the satisfaction of Lord Vishnu. The Vedas enjoin Yajno vai Vishnuhu. In other words, the same purpose is served whether one performs prescribed yajnas or directly serves Lord Vishnu. Krishna consciousness is therefore performance of yajna as it is prescribed in this verse. The Varnashram institution also aims at satisfying Lord Vishnu. Varnashrama charavata purushena parak puman Vishnur aradyate. Therefore, one has to work for the satisfaction of Vishnu. Any other work done in this material world will be a cause of bondage, for both good and evil work have their reactions, and any reaction binds the performer. Therefore, one has to work in Krishna consciousness to satisfy Krishna or Vishnu, and while performing such activities, one is in a liberated stage. This is the great art of doing work, and in the beginning, this process requires very expert guidance. One should therefore act very diligently under the expert guidance of a devotee of Lord Krishna, or under the direct instruction of Lord Krishna himself, under whom Arjuna had the opportunity to work. Nothing should be performed for sense gratification, but everything should be done for the satisfaction of Krishna. This practice will not only save one from the reaction of work, but also gradually elevate one to transcendental loving service of the Lord, which alone can raise one to the kingdom of God. Text 10. Sahad jagya prajasrishtva purubacha prajapitihi anina pashaveshadvam eshavoshtishtakamadu. In the beginning of creation, the Lord of all creatures sent forth generations of men and demigods along with sacrifices for Vishnu, and blessed them by saying, "Be thou happy by this yajna, sacrifice, because its performance will bestow upon you everything desirable for living happily and achieving liberation." Purport. The material creation by the Lord of creatures, Vishnu, is a chance offered to the conditioned souls to come back home, back to Godhead. All living entities within the material creation are conditioned by material nature because of their forgetfulness of their relationship to Vishnu, or Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Vedic principles are to help us understand this eternal relation, as it is stated in the Bhagavad-Gita, Vedaish Chasarvar Aham Eva Vedyaha. The Lord says that the purpose of the Vedas is to understand Him. In the Vedic hymns, it is said, Patim Vishwasyat Meshwaram. Therefore, the Lord of the living entities is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu. In the Srimad Bhagavatam also, Srila Shukadev Goswami describes the Lord as Pati in so many ways. Shriyak Patir Yagapati Prajapatir Diyam Patir Lokapatir Darapatihi Patir Gatis Chandagavishni Sattvatam Prasidatam Me Bhagavan Satang Patihi. The Prajapati is Lord Vishnu, and he is the Lord of all creatures, all worlds, and all beauties, and the protector of everyone. The Lord created this material world to enable the conditioned souls to learn how to perform yajnas, sacrifices, for the satisfaction of Vishnu, so that while in the material world they can live very comfortably, without anxiety, and after finishing the present material body, they can enter into the kingdom of God. That is the whole program for the conditioned soul. By performance of yajna, the conditioned souls gradually become Krishna conscious and become godly in all respects. In the age of Kali, the Sankirtan Yajna, the chanting of the names of God, is recommended by the Vedic scriptures, and this transcendental system was introduced by Lord Chaitanya for the deliverance of all men in this age. Sankirtan Yajna and Krishna consciousness go well together. Lord Krishna, in his devotional form as Lord Chaitanya, is mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam as follows, with special reference to the Sankirtan Yajna. Krishna Varnam Tvisha Krishnam Sangopangascha Parshadam Yagyai Sankirtana Prayaya Yajanti Hi Sumedasaha. In this age of Kali, people who are endowed with sufficient intelligence will worship the Lord, who is accompanied by his associates by performance of Sankirtan Yajna. Other yajnas prescribed in the Vedic literatures are not easy to perform in this age of Kali, but the Sankirtan Yajna is easy and sublime for all purposes, as recommended in Bhagavad-Gita also. Text 11. Devan bhavayatanena te deva bhavayantu baha parasparam bhavayantak shreyak paramavapshata. The demigods, being pleased by sacrifices, will also please you, and thus by cooperation between men and demigods, prosperity will reign for all. Purport. The demigods are empowered administrators of material affairs. The supply of air, light, water, and all other benedictions for maintaining the body and soul of every living entity is entrusted to the demigods, who are innumerable assistants in different parts of the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Their pleasures and displeasures are dependent on the performance of yajna by the Supreme Being. Some of the yajnas are meant to satisfy particular demigods, but even in so doing, Lord Vishnu is worshipped in all yajnas as the chief beneficiary. It is stated also in the Bhagavad-Gita that Krishna himself is the beneficiary of all kinds of yajnas, bhoktaram, yajna tapasam. Therefore, ultimate satisfaction of the yajnapati is the chief purpose of all yajnas. When these yajnas are perfectly performed, naturally the demigods in charge of the different departments of supply are pleased, and there is no scarcity in the supply of natural products. Performance of yajnas has many side benefits, ultimately leading to liberation from material bondage. By performance of yajnas, all activities become purified, as it is stated in the Vedas. Ahara shuddhau sattvashuddhihi, sattvashuddhau dhruva smritihi, smriti lambes swargagantinam vipramokshaha. By performance of yajna, one's eatables become sanctified, and by eating sanctified foodstuffs, one's very existence becomes purified. By the purification of existence, finer tissues in the memory become sanctified, and when memory is sanctified, one can think of the path of liberation. And all these combined together lead to Krishna consciousness, the great necessity of present-day society. Text 12. Ishtan bhogan nibo deva dasyante yagyabhavitaha tayardatan abadayayabhyo yo bhukte sthena eva saha. In charge of the various necessities of life, the demigods, being satisfied by the performance of yajna, sacrifice, will supply all necessities to you. But he who enjoys such gifts without offering them to the demigods in return is certainly a thief. Purport. The demigods are authorized supplying agents on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu. Therefore, they must be satisfied by the performance of prescribed yajnas. In the Vedas, there are different kinds of yajnas prescribed for different kinds of demigods, but all are ultimately offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For one who cannot understand what the Personality of Godhead is, sacrifice to the demigods is recommended. According to the different material qualities of the persons concerned, different types of yajnas are recommended in the Vedas. Worship of different demigods is also on the same basis, namely according to different qualities. For example, the meat-eaters are recommended to worship the goddess Kali, the ghastly form of material nature, and before the goddess, the sacrifice of animals is recommended. But for those who are in the mode of goodness, the transcendental worship of Vishnu is recommended. But ultimately, all yajnas are meant for the gradual promotion to the transcendental position. For ordinary men, at least 5 yajnas known as Pancha Mahayajna are necessary. One should know, however, that all the necessities of life that the human society requires are supplied by the demigod agents of the Lord. No one can manufacture anything. Take, for example, all the eatables of human society. These eatables include grains, fruits, vegetables, milk, sugar, and so on, for the persons in the mode of goodness, and also eatables for the non-vegetarians, like meats, none of which can be manufactured by men. Then again, take, for example, heat, light, water, air, and so on, which are also necessities of life. None of them can be manufactured by the human society. Without the Supreme Lord, there can be no profuse sunlight, moonlight, rainfall, breeze, and so on, without which no one can live. Obviously, our life is dependent on supplies from the Lord. Even for our manufacturing enterprises, we require so many raw minerals like metal, sulfur, mercury, manganese, and so many essentials all of which are supplied by the agents of the Lord with the purpose that we should make proper use of them to keep ourselves fit and healthy for the purpose of self-realization, leading to the ultimate goal of life, namely liberation from the material struggle for existence. This aim of life is attained by performance of yagyas. If we forget the purpose of human life and simply take supplies from the agents of the Lord for sense gratification and become more and more entangled in material existence, which is not the purpose of creation, certainly we become thieves, and therefore we are punished by the laws of material nature. A society of thieves can never be happy because they have no aim in life. The gross materialist thieves have no ultimate goal of life. They are simply directed to sense gratification, nor do they have knowledge of how to perform yagyas. Lord Chaitanya, however, inaugurated the easiest performance of yagya, namely the Sankirtan yagya, which can be performed by anyone in the world who accepts the principles of Krishna consciousness. Text 13. Yagyashishtasanak santo muchante sarvakil vishahi bunyate te tokam papa yepachantyatmakaranat. The devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins because they eat food which is offered first for sacrifice. Others, who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment, verily eat only sin. Purport. The devotees of the Supreme Lord, or the persons who are in Krishna consciousness, are called santas, and they are always in love with the Lord as it is described in the Brahma Samhita. Premanjana churita bhakti bilochanena santak sadaiva hridayeshu bilokayanti. The santas, being always in a compact of love with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, the giver of all pleasures, or Mukunda, the giver of liberation, or Krishna, the all-attractive person, cannot accept anything without first offering it to the Supreme Person. Therefore, such devotees always perform yagyas in different modes of devotional service, such as Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Archanam, and so on. And these performances of yagyas keep them always aloof from all kinds of contamination of sinful association in the material world. Others who prepare food for sense gratification are not only thieves, but also the eaters of all kinds of sins. How can a person be happy if he is both a thief and sinful? It is not possible. Therefore, in order for people to become happy in all respects, they must be taught to perform the easy process of Sankirtan Yagya in full Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, there can be no peace or happiness in the world. Text 14. Anad bhavanti bhutani parjanyat anasambhavaha yagyat bhavati parjanyo yagyat karma samudbhavaha. All living bodies subsist on food grains, which are produced from rains. Rains are produced by performance of yagya, sacrifice, and yagya is born of prescribed duties. Purport. Srila Baladev Vidyabhushana, a great commentator on the Bhagavad-Gita, writes as follows, and there's a long prose, Sanskrit prose, I'll skip it. The Supreme Lord, who is known as the Yagya Purusha, or the personal beneficiary of all sacrifices, is the master of all the demigods who serve him as the different limbs of the body serve the whole. I'll read that again. Supreme Lord, who is known as the Yagya Purusha, or the personal beneficiary of all sacrifices, is the master of all the demigods who serve him as the different limbs of the body serve the whole. Demigods like Indra, Chandra, and Varuna are appointed officers who manage material affairs, and the Vedas direct sacrifices to satisfy these demigods so that they may be pleased to supply air, light, and water sufficiently to produce food grains. When Lord Krishna is worshipped, the demigods who are different limbs of the Lord are also automatically worshipped. Therefore, there is no separate need to worship the demigods. For this reason, the devotees of the Lord who are in Krishna consciousness offer food to Krishna and then eat, a process which nourishes the body spiritually. By such action, not only are past sinful reactions in the body vanquished, but the body becomes immunized to all contamination of material nature. When there is an epidemic disease, an antiseptic vaccine protects the person from the attack of such an epidemic. Similarly, food offered to Lord Vishnu and then taken by us makes us sufficiently resistant to material affection, and one who is accustomed to this practice is called a devotee of the Lord. Therefore, a person in Krishna consciousness who eats only food offered to Krishna can counteract all reactions of past material infections, which are impediments to the progress of self-realization. On the other hand, one who does not do so continues to increase the volume of sinful action, and this prepares the next body to resemble hogs and dogs, to suffer the resultant reactions of all sins. The material world is full of contaminations, and one who is immunized by accepting prasadam of the Lord, food offered to Vishnu, is saved from the attack, whereas one who does not do so becomes subjected to contamination. Food grains or vegetables are factually eatables. The human being eats different kinds of food grains, vegetables, fruits, and so on. And the animals eat the refuse of the food grains and vegetables, grass, plants, and so on. Human beings who are accustomed to eating meat and flesh must also depend on the production of vegetation in order to eat the animals. Therefore, ultimately, we have to depend on the production of the field and not on the production of big factories. The field production is due to sufficient rain from the sky, and such rains, the field production is due to sufficient rain from the sky, and such rains are controlled by demigods like Indra, sun, moon, and so on, and they are all servants of the Lord. The Lord can be satisfied by sacrifices. Therefore, one who cannot perform them will find himself in scarcity. That is the law of nature. Yajna, specifically the Sankirtan Yajna, prescribed for this age, must therefore be performed to save us at least from scarcity of food supply. Karma Brahmad, this is text 15. Karma Brahmod Bhavam Vidhi Brahmaksharat Samud Bhavam Tasmat Sarvagatam Brahma Nityam Yagye Pratishtitam. Translation. Regulated activities are prescribed in the Vedas, and the Vedas are directly manifested from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Consequently, the all-pervading transcendence is eternally situated in acts of sacrifice. Purport. Yagyartat karma, or the necessity of work for the satisfaction of Krishna only, is more expressly stated in this verse. If we have to work for the satisfaction of the Yogi Purusha, Vishnu, then we must find out the direction of work in Brahma, or the Transcendental Vedas. The Vedas are therefore codes of working directions. Anything performed without the direction of the Vedas is called vikarma, or unauthorized, or sinful work. Therefore, one should always take direction from the Vedas to be saved from the reaction of work. As one has to work in ordinary life by the direction of the state, one similarly has to work under the direction of the supreme state of the Lord. Such directions in the Vedas are directly manifested from the breathing of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As it is said, Asya Mahato Bhutasya Nivyastitam Etad Yad Rigvedo Yajurveda Samavedo Tarvan Girisha. The four Vedas, namely the Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, and Atharva Veda, are all emanations from the breathing of the great personality of Godhead. The Lord, being omnipotent, can speak by breathing air, for as it is confirmed in the Brahma Samhita, the Lord has the omnipotence to perform through each of his senses the actions of all other senses. In other words, the Lord can speak through his breathing, and he can impregnate by his eyes. In fact, it is said that he glanced over material nature and thus fathered all living entities. After creating or impregnating the conditioned souls into the womb of material nature, he gave his directions in the Vedic wisdom as to how such conditioned souls can return home back to Godhead. We should always remember that the conditioned souls in material nature are all eager for material enjoyment. But the Vedic directions are so made that one can satisfy one's perverted desires, then return to Godhead, having finished his so-called enjoyment. It is a chance for the conditioned souls to attain liberation. Therefore, the conditioned souls must try to follow the process of yajna by becoming Krishna conscious. Even those who have not followed the Vedic injunctions may adopt the principles of Krishna consciousness, and that will take the place of performance of Vedic yajnas or karmas. Are we still with us? Everyone? Text 16. Evam pravartitam chakram nanu vartayati hayaha agayur indriya ramo mogam partha sajivati. My dear Arjuna, one who does not follow in human life the cycle of sacrifice thus established by the Vedas certainly leads a life full of sin. Living only for the satisfaction of the senses, such a person lives in vain. Purport. The mammonist philosophy of work very hard and enjoy sense gratification is condemned herein by the Lord. Therefore, for those who want to enjoy this material world, the above-mentioned cycle of performing yajnas is absolutely necessary. One who does not follow such regulations is living a very risky life, being condemned more and more. By nature's law, this human form of life is specifically meant for self-realization. In either of the three ways, namely karma yoga, jnana yoga, or bhakti yoga, there is no necessity of rigidly following the performances of the prescribed yajnas for the transcendentalists who are above vice and virtue. But those who are engaged in sense gratification require purification by the above-mentioned cycle of yajna performances. There are different kinds of activities. Those who are not Krishna conscious are certainly engaged in sensory consciousness. Therefore, they need to execute pious work. The yajna system is planned in such a way that sensory conscious persons may satisfy their desires without becoming entangled in the reaction of sense gratificatory work. The prosperity of the world depends not on our own efforts, but on the background arrangement of the Supreme Lord, directly carried out by the demigods. Therefore, the yajnas are directly aimed at the particular demigods mentioned in the Vedas. Indirectly, it is the practice of Krishna consciousness, because when one masters the performance of yajnas, one is sure to become Krishna conscious. But if by performing yajnas, one does not become Krishna conscious, such principles are counted as moral codes, only moral codes. One should not therefore limit his progress only to the point of moral codes, but should transcend them to attain Krishna consciousness. Text 17. Yastvat maritare vasyat atmatriptas jamanavaha atmanyeva chasantushtas tasya karyam navidyate. But for one who takes pleasure in the self whose human life is one of self-realization, and who is satisfied in the self only, fully satiated, for him there is no duty. Purport. A person who is fully Krishna conscious and is fully satisfied by his acts in Krishna consciousness no longer has any duty to perform. Due to his being Krishna conscious, all impiety within is instantly cleansed, an effect of many, many thousands of yajna performances. By such clearing of consciousness, one becomes fully confident of his eternal position in relationship with the Supreme. His duty thus becomes self-illuminated by the grace of the Lord, and therefore he no longer has any obligations to the Vedic injunctions. Such a Krishna conscious person is no longer interested in material activities, and no longer takes pleasure in material arrangements like wine, women, and similar infatuations. Text 18. Naivatasya kritenarto nakriteneha kaschana nachasya sarvabhuteshu kaschirartha vipashrayaha. A self-realized man has no purpose to fulfill in the discharge of his prescribed duties, nor has he any reason not to perform such work, nor has he any need to depend on any other living being. Purport. A self-realized man is no longer obliged to perform any prescribed duty, save and except activities in Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is not inactivity either, for it will be explained as it will be explained in the following verses. A Krishna conscious man does not take shelter of any person, man or demigod. Whatever he does in Krishna consciousness is sufficient in the discharge of his obligation. Text 19. Tasmat asakta satatam karyam karma samachara asakto yacharan karma padam apnoti purushaha. Therefore, without being attached to the fruits of activities, one should act as a matter of duty, for by working without attachment, one attains the Supreme. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead for the devotees and liberation for the impersonalist. The Supreme is the personality of Godhead for the devotees and liberation for the impersonalists. A person therefore acting for Krishna or in Krishna consciousness under proper guidance and without attachment to the result of the work is certainly making progress toward the supreme goal of life. Arjuna is told that he should fight in the battle of Kurukshetra for the interest of Krishna, because Krishna wanted him to fight. To be a good man or a non-violent man is a personal attachment, but to act on behalf of the Supreme is to act without attachment to the result. That is perfect action of the highest degree, recommended by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Vedic rituals, like prescribed sacrifices, are performed for purification of impious activities that were performed in the field of sense gratification. But action in Krishna consciousness is transcendental to the reactions of good or evil work. A Krishna conscious person has no attachment for the result, but works on the behalf of Krishna alone. He engages in all kinds of activities, but is completely non-attached. Text 20. Karmanaiva hisang siddhim astita janakadayaham lokasangrahame vapi sangpashyan kardamarasi. Kings such as Janaka attain perfection solely by performance of prescribed duties. Therefore, just for the sake of educating the people in general, you should perform your work. Purport. Kings like Janaka were all self-realized souls. Consequently, they had no obligation to perform the prescribed duties in the Vedas. Nonetheless, they performed all prescribed activities just to set examples for the people in general. Janaka was the father of Sita and father-in-law of Lord Sri Rama. Being a great devotee of the Lord, he was transcendently situated. But because he was the king of Mithila, a subdivision of Bihar province in India, he had to teach his subjects how to perform prescribed duties. Lord Krishna and Arjuna, the Lord's eternal friend, had no need to fight in the battle of Kurukshetra, but they fought to teach people in general that violence is also necessary in a situation where good arguments fail. Before the battle of Kurukshetra, every effort was made to avoid the war, but even by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but the other party was determined to fight. So for such a right cause, there is a necessity for fighting. Although one who is situated in Krishna consciousness may not have any interest in the world, he still works to teach the people how to live and how to act. Experienced persons in Krishna consciousness can act in such a way that others will follow, and this is explained in the following verse. Text 21. Yad yad acharite shrestas tat tadevatado janaha sayat pramanam kurute lokas tad anuvartate. Whatever action a great man performs, common men follow, and whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. Purport. People in general always require a leader who can teach the public by practical behavior. A leader cannot teach the public to stop smoking if he himself smokes. Lord Chaitanya said that a teacher should behave properly before he begins teaching. One who teaches in that way is called Acharya, or the ideal teacher. Therefore, a teacher must follow the principles of Shastra, scripture, to teach the common man. The teacher cannot manufacture rules against the principles of revealed scriptures. The revealed scriptures, like Manu Samhita and similar others, are considered the standard books to be followed by human society. Thus the leader's teaching should be based on the principles of such standard shastras. One who desires to improve himself must follow the standard rules as they are practiced by the great teachers. The Srimad Bhagavatam also affirms that one should follow in the footsteps of great devotees, and that is the way of progress on the path of spiritual realization. The king, or the executive head of a state, the father, and the school teacher are all considered to be natural leaders of the innocent people in general. All such natural leaders have a great responsibility to their dependents. Therefore, they must be conversant with standard books of moral and spiritual codes. Text 22. Name parthasti kartavyam trishu lokeshu kinchana nanavaptamabaptavyam varte evachakarmani. O son of Pritha, there is no work prescribed for me within all the three planetary systems, nor am I in want of anything, nor do I have a need to obtain anything, and yet I am engaged in prescribed duties. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is described in the Vedic literatures as follows. Tam Ishwaranam Paramam Maheshwaram Tam Devatanam Paramam Chadaivatam Patim Patinam Paramam Parastad Vidama Devam Bhuvaneshamidyam Natasya Karyam Karanam Chavidyate Natat Shamas Chavyatikas Chadrishyate Parasya Shaktir Vividaiva Shruyate Swabhaviki Jnanabala Kriyacha. The Supreme Lord is the controller of all other controllers, and He is the greatest of all the diverse planetary leaders. Everyone is under His control. All entities are delegated with particular power only by the Supreme Lord. They are not supreme themselves. He is also worshipable by all demigods and is the supreme director of all directors. Therefore, He is transcendental to all kinds of material leaders and controllers and is worshipable by all. There is no one greater than Him, and He is the supreme cause of all causes. He does not possess a bodily form, like that of an ordinary living entity. There is no difference between his body and his soul. He is absolute. All his senses are transcendental. Any one of his senses can perform the action of any other sense. Therefore, no one is greater than him or equal to him. His potencies are multifarious, and thus his deeds are automatically performed as a natural sequence. That's the translation for those two verses we just quoted. Since everything is in full opulence in the personality of Godhead and is existing in full truth, there is no duty for the Supreme Personality of Godhead to perform. One who must receive the results of work has some designated duty, but one who has nothing to achieve within the three planetary systems, certainly has no duty. And yet Lord Krishna is engaged on the battlefield of Kurukshetra as the leader of the Kshatriyas, because the Kshatriyas are duty-bound to give protection to the distressed. Although he is above all the regulations of the revealed scriptures, he does not do anything that violates the revealed scriptures. Yadi yaham navarteyam jatu karmanyatandritaha mamavart manuvartante manusha partasarvashaha. For if I ever failed to engage in carefully performing prescribed duties, O Partha, certainly all men would follow my path. Purport. In order to keep the balance of social tranquility for the progress in spiritual life, there are traditional family usages meant for every civilized man. Although such rules and regulations are for the conditioned souls and not Lord Krishna, because he descended to establish the principles of religion, he followed the prescribed rules. Otherwise, common men would follow in his footsteps, because he is the greatest authority. From the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is understood that Lord Krishna was performing all the religious duties at home and out of home as required of a householder. Text 24. Utsi de yurime loka na kuryam karmachedaham sankarasya chakartasyam upahanyam ima prajaha. If I did not perform prescribed duties, all these worlds would be put to ruination. I would be the cause of creating unwanted population, and I would thereby destroy the peace of all living beings. Purport. Varna Sankara is unwanted population, which disturbs the peace of the general society. In order to check this social disturbance, there are prescribed rules and regulations by which the population can automatically become peaceful and organized for spiritual progress in life. When Lord Krishna descends, naturally he deals with such rules and regulations in order to maintain the prestige and necessity of such important performances. The Lord is the Father of all living entities, and if the living entities are misguided, indirectly the responsibility goes to the Lord. Therefore, whenever there is a general disregard of religious regulated principles, the Lord himself descends and corrects the society. We should, however, note carefully that although we have to follow in the footsteps of the Lord, we still have to remember that we cannot imitate him. Following and imitating are not on the same level. We cannot imitate the Lord by lifting Govardhan Hill, as the Lord did in his childhood. It is impossible for any human being. We have to follow his instructions, but we may not imitate him at any time. The Srimad Bhagavatam affirms, Naitat sama charij jatu manasapi nani yani anishwaraha vinasyat yacharan maudyan yatha rudro dijan visham ishwaranam bhajak satyam tataiva charitam kvachit tesham yat swabacho yuktam buddhimangs tat samacharet. One should simply follow the instructions of the Lord and his empowered servants. Their instructions are all good for us, and any intelligent person will perform them as instructed. However, one should guard against trying to imitate their actions. One should not try to drink the ocean of poison in imitation of Lord Shiva. We should always consider the position of the Ishwaras, or those who can actually control the movements of the sun and moon, as superior. Without such power, one cannot imitate the Ishwaras, who are super powerful. Lord Shiva drank poison to the extent of swallowing an ocean, but if any common man tries to drink even a fragment of such poison, he will be killed. There are many pseudo-devotees of Lord Shiva who want to indulge in smoking ganja, marijuana, and similar intoxicating drugs, forgetting that by so imitating the acts of Lord Shiva, they are calling death very near. Similarly, there are some pseudo-devotees of Lord Krishna who prefer to imitate the Lord in his Rasalila, or dance of love, forgetting their inability to lift Govardhan hill. It is best, therefore, that one not try to imitate the powerful, but simply follow their instructions. Nor should one try to occupy their posts without qualification. There are so many incarnations of God without the power of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or the Supreme Godhead. Text 25. Shakta karmaja vidbhang so yatha kurvanti bharata kuryad vidbhang stata saktash chikir shur lokasangraham. As the ignorant perform their duties with attachment to results, the learned may similarly act, but without attachment, for the sake of leading people on the right path. Purport. A person in Krishna consciousness and a person not in Krishna consciousness are differentiated by different desires. A Krishna conscious person does not do anything which is not conducive to development of Krishna consciousness. He may even act exactly like the ignorant person who is too much attached to material activities. But one engaged in such activities for the satisfaction of his sense gratification, whereas the other is engaged for the satisfaction of Krishna. Therefore, the Krishna conscious person is required to show the people how to act and how to engage the results of action for the purpose of Krishna consciousness. Text 26. Nabudhi bedam janayed agyanam karmasanginam joshayat sarvakarmani vidvan yukta samacharan. So as not to disrupt the minds of ignorant men attached to the fruitive results of prescribed duties, a learned person should not induce them to stop work. Rather, by working in the spirit of devotion, he should engage them in all sorts of activities for the gradual development of Krishna consciousness. Purport. Vidaishcha sarva aham eva vedyaha. That is the end of all Vedic rituals. All rituals, all performance of sacrifices, and everything that is put into the Vedas, including all direction for material activities, are meant for understanding Krishna, who is the ultimate goal of life. But because the conditioned souls do not know anything beyond sense gratification, they study the Vedas to that end. But through fruitive activities and sense gratification, regulated by the Vedic rituals, one is gradually elevated to Krishna consciousness. Therefore, a realized soul in Krishna consciousness should not disturb others in their activities or understanding, but he should act by showing how the results of all work can be dedicated to the service of Krishna. The learned Krishna conscious person may act in such a way that the ignorant person working for sense gratification may learn how to act and how to behave. Although the ignorant man is not to be disturbed in his activities, a slightly developed Krishna conscious person may directly be engaged in the service of the Lord without waiting for other Vedic formulas. For this fortunate man, there is no need to follow the Vedic rituals, because by direct Krishna consciousness, one can have all the results one would otherwise derive from following once prescribed duties. 27. Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashaha ahankara vimudatma kartaham iti manyate. The spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the three modes of material nature. Purport. Two persons, one in Krishna consciousness and the other in material consciousness, working on the same level, may appear to be working on the same platform, but there is a wide gulf of difference in their respective positions. The person in material consciousness is convinced by false ego that he is the doer of everything. He does not know that the mechanism of the body is produced by material nature, which works under the supervision of the Supreme Lord. The materialistic person has no knowledge that ultimately he is under the control of Krishna. The person in false ego takes all credit for doing everything independently, and that is the symptom of his nations. He does not know that this gross and subtle body is the creation of material nature under the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and as such his bodily and mental activities should be engaged in the service of Krishna, in Krishna consciousness. The ignorant man forgets that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is known as Rishikesha, or the master of the senses of the material body. For due to his long misuse of the senses and sense gratification, he is factually bewildered by the false ego, which makes him forget his eternal relationship with Krishna. Hare Krishna. Tat vavit tu mahabaho guna karma vibhagayoho guna guneshu vartanta iti matvana sajjate. One who is in knowledge of the absolute truth, O mighty armed, does not engage himself in the senses, in sense gratification, knowing well the differences between work in devotion and work for fruitive results. Purport. The knower of the absolute truth is convinced of his awkward position in material association. He knows that he is part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and that his position should not be in the material creation. He knows his real identity as part and parcel of the Supreme, who is eternal bliss and knowledge, and he realizes that somehow or other he is entrapped in the material conception of life. In his pure state of existence, he is meant to dovetail his activities in devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He therefore engages himself in the activities of Krishna consciousness and becomes naturally unattached to the activities of the material senses, which are all circumstantial and temporary. He knows that his material condition of life is under the supreme control of the Lord. Consequently, he is not disturbed by all kinds of material reactions, which he considers to be the mercy of the Lord. According to the Srimad Bhagavatam, one who knows that the absolute truth in three different features, namely Brahman, Paramatma, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is called Tatvavit. For he knows also his own factual position in relationship with the Supreme. Text 29. This is very interesting purport. Listen up. Prakritir gunasam mudak sajanti gunakarmasu tanna kritsna vido mandan kritsna vinna vichalayat. Bewildered by the modes of material nature, the ignorant fully engage themselves in material activities and become attached. But the wise should not unsettle them, although these duties are inferior due to the performer's lack of knowledge. Purport. Persons who are unknowledgeable falsely identify with gross material consciousness and are full of material designations. This body is a gift of the material nature, and one who is too much attached to the bodily consciousness is called manda, or a lazy person, without understanding of spirit soul. Ignorant men think of the body as the self. They accept bodily connections with others as kinsmanship. The land in which the body is obtained is their object of worship, and they consider the formality. Sorry, I couldn't help but think. The land in which the body is obtained is their object of worship. Make America great.
Again.
Again. Sorry, I couldn't resist it. Oh, I'll go back and read that again without the editing, the editorial comments.
What's he done so far?
Yeah. Ignorant men think of the body as the self. They accept bodily connections with others as kinsmanship, the royal family. Oh, excuse me. Ignorant men think of the body as the self. They accept bodily connections with others as kinsmanship. The land in which the body is obtained is their object of worship. And they consider the formalities of religious rituals to be ends in themselves. Social work, nationalism, and altruism are some of the activities for such materially designated persons. Under the spell of such designations, they are always busy in the material field. For them, spiritual realization is a myth, and so they are not interested. Those who are enlightened in spiritual life, however, should not try to agitate such materially engrossed persons. Better to prosecute one's own spiritual activities silently. Such bewildered persons may be engaged in such primary moral principles of life as nonviolence and similar materially benevolent work. Men who are ignorant cannot appreciate activities in Krishna consciousness, and therefore Lord Krishna advises us not to disturb them and simply waste valuable time. But the devotees of the Lord are more kind than the Lord, because they understand the purpose of the Lord. Consequently, they undertake all kinds of risks, even to the point of approaching ignorant men to try to engage them in the acts of Krishna consciousness, which are absolutely necessary for the human being. So I have to say one thing here. I was on a walk with Srila Prabhupada on 2nd December 1973 in Cheviot Hills Park. I think it was Cheviot Hills Park. It was either there or on the beach. Anyway, I asked him this question. You can listen to it if you have the recordings. You can hear. Of course, I was very weak. I was, when you're with Prabhupada, you can imagine how intense that was. So I went, Srila Prabhupada, you're great. And he said, what did he say? To his secretary. And then I tried again, Srila Prabhupada, the devotees of the Lord. And he said, what did he say? And then the third time, I got it. I said, Srila Prabhupada, is the devotee of the Lord more kind than the Lord? It's exactly right out of this purport. Prabhupada stopped. He turned around, he looked right at me, and I was this far from him. And he smiled, ocean, and he grinned. He looked me right in the eyes and he said, oh yes. At that time I just kind of melted into the sand, or wherever it was, the park. And I stood there watching him, and he started to talk about how Arjuna wanted to save them, but Krishna wanted to kill them. And then this was 1973, so he was still in maybe the third canto, and we hadn't heard about Ambarish and Durvasa Muni and that pastime, which some of you might not be aware of it, but I'll try to fill in some details. And so he told the story, and we hadn't heard it before. So I was in ecstasy, everybody was in ecstasy, because Prabhupada sometimes didn't speak so much on the morning walks, but once he got onto a subject that he really liked, he went on and on. And he told how Durvasa Muni was a great devotee, Durvasa Muni was a great yogi, and Ambarish was a great devotee, and Durvasa Muni insulted him, Maharaj Ambarish. Maharaj Ambarish took the humble position, and then Durvasa Muni, out of his mystic power, created a big demon, and he started to, do something to Maharaj Ambarish, and then Krishna sent the Sudarshan Chakra because he saw that his devotee was in trouble, and that Sudarshan Chakra started chasing Maharaj, the demon, not the demon, the Durvasa Muni. He started to chase him, and he went all different places. He went to the higher planets, and he asked for shelter, and they said, sorry, this is Krishna, we can't do anything, this is Sudarshan Chakra. So he's telling all these things, right? And when he finished the story, and how Maharaj Ambarish won the so-called battle with Durvasa Muni, and when he finally came to Vishnu, Vishnu said, I'm sorry, he's my devotee, and you just offended him. So if you want protection from the Sudarshan Chakra, you have to go back to Maharaj Ambarish, fall at his feet, and beg forgiveness. And he did that, and then he was saved, basically. So I was just in ecstasy. And then we went back to the temple, finished the morning walk, went back to the temple, and Prabhupada started on the same theme, and he went through the whole class on the same theme. So this is really an important point, that even though Krishna is saying, don't disturb the people who are too attached, the devotees go to them anyway with a book. It's the classic book distribution purport. I always bring it out when it comes to that, and gives them an opportunity, because they understand what the purpose of the Lord is. The Lord wants people to become delivered. He wants them to come back to Him, to the spiritual world. And He knows that they can't do it unless they get contact with a pure devotee. Even when Lord Chaitanya came, he was the Lord Himself. He didn't need to do anything. But when it came time for Him to kind of convince certain persons who were very, very difficult to convince, like students and philosophers, so-called learned people who were actually bewildered, then He took sannyas. Because everyone in India pays obeisance to sannyasis, no matter who they are, practically. And so He tricked them into paying respect to Him, because if they were going to disrespect Him, then it would be very difficult for them to make any advancement. So that's the purpose of the Krishna consciousness movement. When we read these things, we need to identify them, not so much looking out and seeing what other people are like, but we have to look within ourselves and try to follow the instructions, rather than imitate the great souls. That was my reflection. Any other reflections? Hare Krishna. Please save me from my embarrassment. Questions, reflections, doubts, confusion, suggestions, chastisement, correction? Yes, Krishna Kripa.
Yes. These verses, starting with 26,
these verses, starting with 26,
are so much more clear
than
in the original editions of the Bhagavad-Gita,
than in the original versions of Bhagavad Gita, which I learned by heart.
Yeah, they're just so much easier to apply than just the kind of the way they were translated before, very simplistically almost. for me. I'm just amazed at how the difference is and how clear it is hearing it from somebody else reading it to me.
Well, it is. It's true that the first Gita that was translated by, Hayagriva. Actually, that was the second Gita. Anyway, Hayagriva's translation. He was taking from the translations of other Gitas, because Prabhupada told him at one point that the purports were more important than the verses. So he thought he'd save time. So he put the verses, and he was saying the Blessed Lord said, and he was saying so many things. And so they sound flowery. They're like easy to put into music and all those things. But many times they were philosophically wrong, and they were the opposite of what Prabhupada said in his translations of the Gita. So that's why the second edition or the revised edition came out, because so many things were left out that Prabhupada wanted in, and so many concepts were being changed that were brought back to Prabhupada's concepts. So sometimes I just watched a video. They had a discussion about this subject matter in Los Angeles during the Rath Yatra weekend, and Dravida was there, and Garuda was there, who's now a respectable scholar, and people seem to be able to hear from people with PhDs more than people like Dravida, who actually did the work and has been doing it for like 40 years and knows what he's doing. And there were a group of devotees, some of which were in favor of the changes and some of which were not. And it was very revealing. You can look at it if you want. It's on the Dandavat website. And it's very interesting when you hear Dravida get up and give his presentation why they made the changes they did to put it back to the way Prabhupada and give examples. It's so clear. And most of the sentiments of those who want to go back to the other translation were saying things like, it just made us want to dance when we heard it. It was so flowing and it was so poetic, and as if what is in the Gita now is not flowing and poetic. It's Prabhupada's words. And they're thinking, and it's, it was empowered. It made us devotees. We didn't, the revised didn't come out until 82 or 83. Made us devotees, so it's empowered. There's no doubt about that. But once we wised up and got the philosophy, then we can see the mistakes. And especially when the translators started translating in different languages, that's when it came out, the need. Because the translators were coming back to the original editor saying, what does this mean? And then in our language, this is hard to express. And then they started looking at it with more, with more careful attention. And they found so many things. The classic one is 220. Can you read it from that? I can recognize them a mile away. Huh?
Yeah, I didn't look, and I still have my original Gita also.
I still have mine on my shelf in my...
So just the translation?
Just the translation.
For the soul there is never birth nor death, nor having once been, does he ever cease to be.
Ooh.
He is unborn, eternal, ever existing, undying and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain.
Wow, it's so flowing. It's so nice. So let's read it again and analyze it.
Okay. So I read again?
Yeah.
For the soul there is never birth nor death.
Yes.
Nor having once been, does he ever cease to be.
Nor having once been, does he ever cease to be. That means there was a time when he did not exist. That's straight from Radha Krishna's translation of the Gita, and Radha Krishna is an impersonalist. He's a Mayavadi. So if you're attached to that book and you want to keep it the way it is, then you should go to the Mayavadis, and you will eventually. Eventually you will.
We bought this from you when you came to my house, Maharaj.
Ooh! No, that's not fair. No. Sorry, I'm not going to let you get away with that. I'm not going to let you get away with that. Because the other book was not out.
Oh yes, it wasn't out.
It was not out.
Yeah, it's a sentimental one.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. There's a sentimental attachment because those are the verses that we first learned and memorized and sang with kantars and all the things that we did in the beginning. But it wasn't correct. And then when Jadwaita Maharaj went back to the verse, because for the first 6 chapters we've got everything. We've got the sound of his voice doing the recording. We've got the first transcription. We've got the first, edition. And then we've got the second edition. And you can look at it. You should go to this site if you have any doubt about what I'm saying right now. Go to this site, bbtedit.com. bbtedit.com. And there you will see it all laid out in front of your eyes. Because all the changes are there, and what it was in the beginning, what Prabhupada originally said. So when they say that they're changing Prabhupada's books, and they're no longer potent, they made me a devotee. Well, I got news for you. There's about, 50,000 more devotees now than there were then, and they all became devotees by reading the second edition. So it's no argument at all. It's just, but if you're attached to it and you can't give it up, then continue to read it. The BBT made the decision to keep that version in the database. It'll always be there for you to read if you like that version. If you want to think that you were never the soul at that time, then you're welcome. But that was a good point, she said. I gave her the book.
That's all we had.
That's all you had.
And we grabbed them when we were.
No, but I'm telling you. No, listen up. We didn't understand the philosophy.
Yeah.
And we didn't pick up on what that meant.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. You hear something unconsciously, and it affects your consciousness, and you get a misconception in your brain, and it's very difficult to get out. Okay, we'll stop here. Hare Krishna, it's exactly 8:30. Hari Bol, all glory to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much.